Very warm welcome to you. It's Jim from maverickstar Observatory. Guys, we're going to be talking about, what all this comes down to and how it affects our planet. We're talking about, three major anomalies that are taking place right now: the grand solar minimum, the magnetic pole reversal, and the returning back into a glacial period. I've showed the data and the facts on all of these topics. They're all very real anomalies. They're all taking place right now, and they do have a major influence on our climate and our Earth. So we'll be talking about this in a few minutes. I just wanted to briefly mention the link down there for the PayPal, and also there is now a direct bank-to-bank information there. If you want to just transfer and you don't like using PayPal, you can transfer it directly to my account, cutting out obviously the commission that I would be charged by PayPal. We had over 5,000 people watch the video that we did on the latest magnetic pole position, but 4 people out of that 5,000 actually stood up and made a small contribution. I think you would agree with me that we could do much better than that, especially when we aren't like all the other channels on YouTube. We've actually got qualifications in science, and we are qualified to talk about the subjects that we do. Yet there are people out there with way more subscribers than me, and I can't figure why, for the life of me, why somebody would go to those channels and listen to what they've got to say when they are not even qualified in the subjects in which they are talking about. Think about that. Would you go to a dentist and have a mechanic fix one of the fillings in your teeth? Of course you wouldn't. You'd want someone that was skilled in repairing teeth, not skilled in repairing cars. And that's exactly what we've got going on YouTube. And I'm not going to mention any names, but these people know who they are. They go onto their little fly on the wall videos and podcasts, and they talk about me behind my back. And why do they do that? It's pure jealousy. That's all it is. They know what they're doing is wrong, and they are trying to educate people on these topics when they've got no qualifications to do so in the first instant. And yet people are being misinformed by them. And it's these very same people that are misinforming the masses on these platforms that are, talking about me in a bad way. I really cannot believe it. It's a joke. They don't have any of their own equipment. They haven't invested any of their own money in actually trying to use a scientific method by, recording data from equipment that they've specifically either purchased or made themselves. And they've got the nerve and audacity to point a finger at me. I have proved everything for you guys. I showed you my qualifications, I showed you the equipment that we've got a dedicated website, and we keep you regularly informed now, twice a month, on the latest magnetic pole position. I think it deserves just a little bit of support from a few more than 4 people. But let's get on with what really all these anomalies come down to and how they affect us. Well, to start with, the magnetic North Pole. It is obviously having a detrimental effect on our jet streams, as you can see, and we've got that common interchange between the 2 subtropical jet streams, where the jet stream is swaying over the equatorial region, and then it allows on the southern hemisphere that jet stream then to break off into the polar region of the Antarctic Circle, should I say. And you can see we're talking about super jet streams. And then you've got subtropical over the northern hemisphere, reaching right up into the polar jet stream. So it's carrying that warm, humid air, it's colliding with the cold air, and of course when these two things happen, it shouldn't come as any surprise, we are going to see major flash floods as a result of heavy precipitation, similar to what we saw in the last week, where, you know, over 5,000 people now have lost their lives, and still, you know, many thousands of people still missing as a result of that. We predicted this at the beginning of the year. If you remember, we said over 50,000 people will die as a result of the climatic changes on our planet, and we probably have already surpassed that number. You know, I didn't have a crystal ball. I just said that these anomalies that we're seeing, these strange weather patterns that are dropping massive amounts of precipitation in record-breaking levels, was going to increase, because, you know, we are still going through a magnetic pole reversal, and our magnetosphere is still weakening, and as a result of that, you know, we are going to see more condensation platforms building up in the jet streams, and that in turn will lead to condensation and precipitation building up in the jet streams. And because there is that much of it now, we are starting to see, like we have over the last 10-15 years, fragmentation over the northern and subtropical, or polar and subtropical jet streams intermixing, and we get these fragmentations where they break, and sometimes, as we can see here, they go over the equatorial region. You know, adding to this, we are slowly going deeper into that cycle of a glacial period. And I did mention the other day the difference between a glacial period and an ice age. You know, if we have ice over the caps, then officially and scientifically we are still in an ice age. So we have never came out of the last ice age. We're still in it. But there is a difference between ice ages and glacial periods, because glacial periods last around 90,000 years, and they cover the majority of the northern and southern hemispheres in ice and glaciers. That's why they're called glacier periods. And we could be, you know, 2,000 to 6,000 years already returning into that next cycle where the Earth's glaciers start to regain. If we look at you know, the ice over the Arctic, the content of ice, we'll see that it's already in the last 11 years rebounded to a size of an area 1.8 million square kilometres. That is a huge, if we put that area over Europe, it would be a huge chunk of Europe. And that is what has been rebounded in just 11 years. And mainstream media are not going to talk about it, because they are pushing the agenda for climate change in favour of it warming, and therefore, you know, we are being blamed as a species for doing this. But we could never interfere with nature on such a scale as what they are claiming we have. They won't even have a debate about it no more. You know, the debate has been closed and the decision is final. You know, people like, you know, those 1,000 scientists, one of them being Mickey Mouse, and I'm not kidding you, one of those scientists' names on that list of scientists was Mickey Mouse. You know, the debate has been closed, and now they are pushing the agenda to raise £500 billion every year from all the countries that make up the United Nations. This has led to energy prices doubling and quadrupling, and when that happened, when the energy prices went up by that much, so did everything else on the chain. Double and quadruple. So your food has gone up, and your food has gone up not just because of energy, but it will have gone up because of that, but there are other influences now on the way that food is slowing down in the productive magnitudes of food. What I mean by that is that we are seeing, you know, massive chunks of land in the northern and southern areas where, you know, these are cropping areas, go offline as a result of the changing local climate in those regions. And what farmers are doing is what any farmer would do, is changing at first the crops, because it no longer is viable to get, you know, a sustainable crop like it was probably 20 years ago of a particular species, so he changes it for something that's more suited to now the newer climate, and this goes down the pecking order, and eventually there is no other alternative but to close shop. You know, I do feel for farmers, because they will do exactly what we will do in those situations. You know, at first, you know, it's probably manageable, but long term it becomes unmanageable. You know, they have to fork out a hell of a lot of money on farm equipment. It's not the cheapest. Running and servicing of that equipment still needs to be done, but when your yields are getting lower and lower, and the crops that you're having to use now on that land don't yield the same amount of profits, then these farmers start doing exactly what we would do, hoping that next year will be better, and therefore borrowing the money on the basis that next year's crops will be better. But when next year comes and the climate has damaged the crops yet again, you know, farmers then almost are in a position where they will lose their farms. And we're seeing this happen not just in the most northern and southern hemispheres of our planet, we're seeing it happen all over the world. Pakistan, farmers are committing suicide by an alarming rate every single month. I kid you not, if you'd done a search for it, you'd be shocked that in the last year, how many farmers in countries like Pakistan, India, have committed suicide as a result of not being able to produce the crops because of flood damage, drought, you know, shortage in seasons, you know, changes in climate, etc. So, you know, it's not going to get any better as long as these anomalies are still hanging round. And you can bet your bottom dollar tomorrow that the magnetic pole will still be in effect, and you can bet your bottom dollar that, you know, there will be no changes in the 100,000 year cycles that brings back another glacial period. And you can bet your bottom dollar that the sun's output with regards to sunspots will continue to decline, because it hasn't reached even an equilibrium point yet, where it has got to its worst point and it is starting to get better. What we're seeing is it's still take a nosedive off the chart. So those three anomalies are major climate impactors, and it's beyond me why mainstream media won't talk about the other three. You know, the magnetic pole reversal, the grand solar minimum, and the returning back to an ice age. They won't talk about these things. They certainly aren't informing the general public about the arable cropping lands that are going offline by the day. And, you know, they say very little about these farmers that are committing suicide because they cannot, you know, afford to pay the bills which they've run up in the hope that next year's crop will be profitable and set the record straight for them. You know, all these are very big stories, but your mainstream media are certainly, for some reason, staying away from them. And if there was ever a good reporter out there that really wanted to do some reporting, then it could easily be open season for them on these topics. But we know why they're not reporting. It's because they've got rid of all the real reporters, the good reporters, and now they are just regurgitating stories that they've been told to cover, as opposed to go out there and do some real journalism. You know, it's a real shame with what's going on. We've got people that have got no solid scientific qualifications talking about bodies in our solar system, you know, planets in our solar system aligning, and that, you know, this is going to cause some weird magnetic square flux or whatever, which is going to affect our Earth. You know, these planets have been around for 4.5 billion years in our solar system, and I can guarantee you They have gone through the cycles and configurations many times without any serious effects or changes to our Earth. But, you know, people do, I suppose, want to have their fillings repaired by mechanics and not dentists and doctors. And until things change, nothing is going to get any better. But I'm not liked because I've got equipment, I've got a dedicated observatory, and I'm qualified to talk on the subjects of chemistry, physics, biology, maths, earth sciences and astronomy. So I can talk about planets, I can talk about climate, I can talk about, you know, geology, things like that, and the history of climate on our planet. And, you know, you can trust that when I talk about these subjects, that you are listening to someone that actually went to university to study, you know, the different disciplines in which I did. So you get a more accurate, informed, you know, piece of information when it comes from someone like me, as opposed to just somebody that goes out there, goes to the mainstream organisations for their data and information, and then regurgitates it back to you. You could have done it yourself. But what you can't do tomorrow for yourself is pull an SD card out of a Trimag system and find out where the true magnetic North Pole is and its current position. That's something we can do for you, as well as check the CO2 in the atmosphere, the oxygen in the atmosphere, you know, check the magnetometers from different locations around the world, and muon radiation, which is a direct result of collisions in the upper atmosphere with cosmic rays. You know, if muons are increasing, then we know the magnetosphere has weakened more. If the magnetic intensities where we measure it around the world is weakening, then we know the magnetosphere is also weakening. And if that happens in a big magnitude of drop in those field strengths, we know that we're on line for the reversal to take place very, very quickly. And we will be that early warning system for you guys and for anyone else around the world. But it does require a little bit of funding, and it should be more than 4 people, especially when 5,000 people, you know, gained access to that information. We have 20,000 people visit our website every single week, and more needs to be done, you know, from the people that are gaining access to this information. These are the worst times we've ever been in, I've got to say that, but we can get through them if we help each other. You know, it just requires a little bit of effort. We're doing everything we can here to keep you informed on these anomalies that are taking place. And, you know, 5,000 people lost their lives last week, just last week, in an horrendous magnitude storm, high magnitude storm that dropped, you know, months worth of rain in a short space of time. And 5,000 and probably a few more have lost their lives. 10,000 people are missing, and hundreds of thousands of people have been displaced. It is just a matter of time, I promise you, before these events come closer to you. And you can't say if ever you watched a few of these videos you wasn't warned well in advance. Guys, there's a link down there in the description. I really hope to see a little bit better results with regards to a little bit more funding for the observatory. And, you know, I'm going to say what I usually do: you take care of your loved ones. These are treacherous times that we're all facing right now, and there is no sign of the equilibrium, so that means they're going to get worse. So what I usually do. Bye for now.